Hello, hello. Happy Friday. We hope that you are having a great week, and we are looking forward to this Memorial weekend. We have lots of family activities planned, and hopefully, the weather will be cooperating with us. So, we are Nathaniel and Amy, the homemade family. We're currently talking about shaping your family's culture. And we've been doing a series here. So if you want to go back and listen to some of those, you can go back at www.thehomemadefamily.com, or you can listen anywhere podcasts are found. Just search for Insight Now, The Homemade Family. You can find us on our YouTube channel. Search for The Homemade Family, Nathaniel and Amy White. And with that, we are going to jump in today. We are talking about values.
Values. We're talking about decision shapers.
Yes.
Because decisions are what build our life. Decisions are what build our habits. Decisions are what shape our family culture ultimately. But really quick, just a clarification. What's our web address? .com.org.
.com.
You're sure of that?
Yes,
okay.
I am.
All right. I was not 100% sure.
Homemade
we had a mix up on that in a recent episode. So I was just clarifying that one.
Yes.
So earlier this week, we took our camping trailer out for our first trip of the year. We went to a beautiful state park in near Hudson, Wisconsin, called Willow Creek State Park, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. There's a river, and there's waterfalls, and there's a dam, and there's lots of forests and bluffs and hills and beautiful overlooks and all kinds of stuff. You can go on our Facebook pages and see pictures that we posted of all those things. But one of the things about this place was there were different displays that talked about how this area was one that was settled by pioneers about 150 years ago. And there's even one particular spot where it was the original settling community's graveyard that is set aside still. Like, there's no headstones, there's no anything you'd know that that's a graveyard, except they have it set aside even to today. And so everywhere that we went then, and all these trails that now exist, we would be thinking like, man, these thick forests and these thick woods, and all of a sudden you're on a river gorge, and here's this precipitous drop that just opens up in front of you, and all these just things that would make exploring this area kind of interesting and potentially difficult. And you can't see where you're going because you're in the forest and all of these things. And we'd have these conversations of just what would it be like to be a settler or an explorer coming through and trying to figure out where are you and where are you going and why are you here and what are you even looking for and all of those kinds of things. And because we're not nature explorers, we're explorers in a much different sense, I think, but that's not, we like there to be paths where we go in nature. And even when our kids run off the paths, we're like, hey, don't go over there in the long grass, you'll get ticks. And we like there to be these boundaries and guardrails and things that keep us safe and keep us knowing where we are and that we're not lost. And because there were paths, we walked all through those woods, and we had a great time exploring them, soaking up their beauty, enjoying the waterfalls and the river. Never once had fear of getting lost or getting hurt or anything like that, because we had trails and we had a map. And what is it that can give us that same confidence in life? What helps us know where to go, where not to go? What guides our decisions as we go day to day, week to week, year to year?
And that is where values come in. We've talked about culture and how culture is an invisible force that just pulls us along, and how we have been like defining and looking at the things that we can do on purpose to pull out of culture or to build in the direction that we want to go. And having our values is one of those things. And we're going to talk about what values are. We're going to talk about how you guys can help understand what your values are and how you can intentionally create values that then shape and direct where your family is going to go on purpose. And we'll talk about how to get those values into your kids too.
Yes, because your values will shape your family culture. Your values, whether you have them defined or not, your values, whether you have them defined or not, they are what guide your decisions. They are the guardrails. We've got some comments coming in on my own personal. So we've got Maria saying, thank you for sharing this. You're very welcome, Maria. And Zach over cashier saying, you guys are the best. You guys are the best.
Yes,
Zach,
thank you.
Holly, we love you guys.
Anyway,
and so
values
are the filters for life's choices. They are the guardrails and boundaries. They are the framework that helps us build what we actually intend to build. So how do you know what your values are? Well, there are many ways of discovering your values, but two of the most direct and clear ways that you can start with are just simply asking the question of where do you spend your time and your money? I'll say that again. Where do you spend your time and your money? Those are the things that'll tell you what is most important to you.
Mm-hmm. You can say that you have a value for helping the poor, and most of us do. We have a value for that, like our compassion is towards them and those things. But if we actually sat down and studied our checkbook and made an accounting of where we spent our time, we might find that we aren't actually giving our time or our money into helping the poor or serving the poor. And so then we need to ask, do I really have a value for that, where we might have the value but not the priority? So that can kind of help guide you is where, like this is what I said in like some of the comments beforehand. It's like sometimes I think that we have the values, but if they're not actually the decision-making things that we're doing or the things that we're spending our time and money on, then maybe they aren't really as high a value as we think that they are.
Right. So like also, for example, I think many of us would not probably want to admit how high of a value we have for comfort. Like, I don't know, for myself, I'm like, no, I'm rugged and I'm
not me. I like
whatever.
Glamping, not camping.
So I don't know. And maybe for especially us men, we would have a hard time admitting that we have a high value for I almost said camping, for comfort. But let's just paint this scenario. It's the middle of summer and your air conditioner breaks. How quickly will you shell out maybe thousands of dollars to have it fixed or replaced? I mean, like the questions are, how much will you spend? Will you spend money? How much will you spend? And how urgently will you spend it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this needs to get fixed now. Who can come fix this today? Those are the kinds of things that when it's not a necessity, because like, okay, in Minnesota, there's almost not ever a necessity for you to have air conditioning. There's maybe a handful of days a year where it's actually dangerously hot. But you can open windows, you can put on fans, like it isn't a necessity, but the comfort sure is nice. So this is the question. Will you spend money on it? How much money will you spend on it? How urgently will you spend it? And those kinds of situations, as they pop up, they help reveal, oh, I wouldn't have said this was a value for me, but now in this situation, I see it determining my choices and my behavior. So I realize I actually do have a value for this.
Mm-hmm. So we say that we have a value for family, but then the question is, how quickly do we leave it behind when things get hard or trying? So these values can actually kind of help us to stick to we make decisions through that value system.
Right.
So go ahead.
Sorry, I know it's not in the notes, but I just want to
go ahead.
Elaborate on that, because Proverbs in scripture, Proverbs says, without vision, people cast off restraint. And so if we don't have vision, if we don't understand where are we going, why are we going there, how does this actually satisfy the values that we have in our lives and what is truly important to us, if we don't have that, then that's where we cast off restraint and we end up over here, we end up over there, we end up doing all these different things and then wondering why life isn't fulfilling or satisfying, or wondering why our family isn't thriving the way that we want it to be, in the ways we want it to be thriving. Or we wonder why our kids look just like everybody else's kids, and we were really hoping that they'd be something different. But all of those things come from not knowing and defining and understanding our vision. Where are we trying to go? And our values, which help provide the boundaries that keep us on a pursuit to get where we're trying to get to.
Yeah. I think that's really good. Again, if you didn't catch our last, 3 or 4 episodes, you might want to run back. We have Breaking Up with Culture and I can't remember the names of them, but creating your family. And all of these are kind of little pieces that are part of it. Zach says, truth, you guys are the real deal. Yeah. Yes. But having that defined vision, that where are we going and why are we going there? And so, we have a high value for family, and we know our why. Our why is because we want to influence the world for Christ. And when we said, how can we best do this? We started thinking through the 7 mountains of society and thinking about, well, do we go after the education mountain or the political mountain or the government mountain or the media mountain, entertainment mountain? And then we realized that when you do family right, family actually influences every single mountain of society. Because
everybody comes from family.
Everybody comes from family. Healthy people create healthy families. Healthy families create healthy individuals that go out and create healthy community, healthy workplaces, healthy everything. And so if we really want to transform society and the world around us, we decided we had to do it from family. Right. This was the first place. Change the world, start at home. Pretty sure that is what Mother Teresa said. If you want to make a difference, go home and love your family well.
Yeah.
And so as we were very first getting married, Nathaniel and I sat down and we're kind of like, what do we want our world to look like? What do we want our life to look like? And we started writing out these ideals that we would have, but we knew that we wanted to make family a priority. So for us, that looked like we want to work jobs where we work from home. We want to homeschool our kids. We didn't want to send our kids to daycare because we wanted to be the primary voice of influence in their life. Now, this is great, but we have the value for family. We also have a value for eating and having a vehicle, and needing to and paying for the roof over our heads, right? So how do we then make these two things work together where we actually need jobs to feed our family, but we have the high value for family also? So this was where we said, we have this high value for family. And because we have that high value for family, we also have a high value for eating. But which of the values is higher, and can they work together? So when we were looking for jobs, we either worked opposite shifts so that we could take care of our kids, or we found jobs where we could work from home. And sometimes we actually did bring help into our home, but we were always there when help was in our home. We decided very early on that we probably wouldn't do sports because we had 5 kids and we didn't want to be running 10 different directions. We also made a decision early on that we couldn't be out more than 2 nights a week, especially when the kids were young. I think it kind of flexes a little bit now, but we made these choices.
We realized that bedtimes especially are one of the key connecting times of the day.
Yes.
That time is more valuable than other random times throughout the day. And getting their beginning of the day, getting their end of the day, and meal times. Those were the 3 most key times we discovered that there are in the day. Mm-hmm. And so, that means we're going to do our best to guard and protect those times. And whatever. I mean, I had a part-time second job for a while that was 3 evenings a week. So I wasn't around for all of the bedtimes. So we're not saying that this was a hard and fast absolute rule, but it definitely was a guiding value that kept pulling us back to this as what we were aiming for.
Yep. And I'm not saying that you guys have to work jobs from home or homeschool your kids or any of those things.
It's your family.
Yeah, it's your family. You do what works for you. But if you have a high value for family, then that actually will probably put some boundaries and restrictions on the things that you can say yes to and the things that you say no to. That's where values become boundaries that help you to attain your vision and your mission for your family and the keys to the things that you want. Zach Overcasher says, you got me with the AC example. It's my favorite man-made inventions. I'd get it fixed immediately, especially in Florida. Question towards the time value for the work versus family. What would you say to those that say they are working for them, but sacrifice the connection aspect? That's a really good question.
That is a really good question. Can I jump in on that one?
Go for it.
Because that's a personal one for me. I think, I just was reading this example recently in a book project that I might be taking on. And it was an example the author was giving of a client he worked with who built the beautiful house and had all the stuff and provided all this amazing life, everything that you could possibly wish for. And as the author was touring the home with this man, he sees the family picture and he's like, oh, that must be your family. He's like, yeah, they were, but they left because they had no connection. And his wife at one point finally said, look, I'd rather have you than all the rest of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have ears to hear it. One of my favorite movies growing up was the movie Hook, which same kind of thing. Like Peter Pan came back from Neverland, grew up, became an adult, and was married to his job. And I think you just kind of have to look like you can't, I don't think it's possible. Maybe in the person who's doing the work, they might have the connection in their heart, like that in their mind, in their heart, in their inner world, I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my family. So they might feel intimately connected to their family by all the time they're spending at work. But for the people who aren't there, all they feel is the absence and the lack. Mm-hmm. And they might be able to mentally do the gymnastics of saying, I know my dad or I know my mom, they're doing this for me. They're doing this for me. They're doing this for me. But I know from personal experience that the Christmas gift under the tree, like, man, I'd rather just have a fishing trip, or I'd rather go play catch in the backyard. I'd rather have some time together. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, this is where communication becomes really important in family, where for me, this is where we try to walk humbly as parents and say, hey, kids, we need your feedback. How are we doing? Mm-hmm. Are we connecting? Is this hitting the target? And you just watch for symptoms of disconnect in your kids' lives and be humble enough to say, hey, I'm really trying to do this to love you, but I can see it's not making that connection with you. So then maybe I need to do something different, or maybe I need to have some conversations so you can understand it, or maybe both.
Yep. And I just want to throw a couple quick things in there too. First of all, parenting is a short season. And I feel like a lot of us think that if I choose to parent and to scale back in this season, then that's my entire life and I'm never going to get it back. But the truth is it's so short of a season that really you can have this season to be at home more and then go out later and still fulfill all the callings on your life. The second thing I would say is, you know what? It's not an all or nothing, but you really need to measure how many times you're choosing work over family or choosing the event over connection. And so there are seasons when you're like, you know what? I've got to be out of the house a little bit more. Here it is. It's just this, like give your kids that perspective of like, it's going to be for this week or two, but I'm going to,
or for this month,
or
this is going to be a long month.
But at the end of this month, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go on this 2-day camping trip. We're going to go out to dinner. We're going to go do this special thing, like not buying them off, but helping them, their investment into what you're doing have benefit. Give them the vision of why you're doing it, invite them into it,
that they're part of the process.
They're part of the process, that they're part of the team, what part can they handle? But I think part of it is just weighing your own heart. Are you consistently choosing this over connection? So then that's a little indicator that maybe some of these things are out of balance. And then, if you feel like, well, I have to work so much to pay for all these things, then maybe the choice is we need to sit down and say what things are really necessary in life right now and what things can we give up. I remember reading a book by James Dobson, and he was dropping his daughter off at daycare, and she, like, for 2 or 3 days in a row was just freaking out and screaming and like, please don't send me there. And he's like, he remembered the day he took her, he turned around and went home. He called his wife and said, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we can't send her to daycare anymore. So wife quit their job and they chose to sell a car so that they didn't have that car payment. That would help to do things. So sometimes, like we said, these values help us to make the tough decision. What do we value more? Right. If you say you value family, but what you're really working for is all the stuff, then maybe it's not the right value. And then you can make some of those adjustments based on that. And we're going to give you some homework here in just a minute to help you shape some of those things. But great question, Zach.
And I would just say one last thing on it. You're getting, that was a great question. You're getting a whole episode's worth of answer. But the one last thing that I would say is I think that it really helps too to understand what you need all that income for.
Yes.
Okay, you're doing it for family. What about family? What does your family need the money? Mm-hmm. Is it just toys? Is it status? Is it stuff? Is it comfort? Is it inheritance? Like, well, how much inheritance do they need? What are you trying to set them up for? Or I just have a gifts love language and I want to give. Like, okay, that's great. But maybe, I'd just be looking at some of those deeper things because okay, well, what is the money for? Or what is the job for? Because that's, again, just, I think the Lord gives work. Work is a good thing. God created Adam and Eve and he put them in a garden to work it and keep it. And so work is part of our assignment from the Lord. But then that's the question. Is our job part of how we're serving the Lord, or is it just to get money?
Yes.
Are you serving money, or does your job actually have a greater purpose that is building God's kingdom in some way, shape, or form? And so like Zach, for you guys have Elderwise, and you are investing in people's health. You are investing in health, and you've lived your own health journey. And I know you're going to be doing your own podcast, so I think it's okay. I'm assuming it's okay for me to share some of those details. And Holly's been very public with her own health journey and things like that. But it's like you saw how a lack of health tore your family apart and made things really hard. And so you're like, we want to build people's ability to connect by simply being healthy. And so, well, that's amazing. That's a hugely amazing mission. Well, now the company you build to do that has a much greater purpose than just making money. Mm-hmm. And you can invite your kids into that in a way that's like, hey, you're making a difference in people's lives. It's not just stuff.
Yep. One more quick thing. I know this question that Zach asked wasn't just for Zach. This is actually for everybody, because I think all of us at some point face this question.
For sure.
We're all in this, but
which is why we're taking the time on it too.
Yes, which is why we're taking the time on it. But just that other piece, I think, is knowing the love languages of your family. And making sure that even if you are choosing work and busier work for your family and for making health for other families, If you know how to connect with your kids in a way that makes them feel loved and special and accepted, then, like the balance, it's not like we all just have to be there all the time around each other, but you actually make those meaningful points, because whether you're a homeschool mom, homeschool dad, whatever, or you're a working parent and you just have those connection points with your family, it really is about making the most of the time that you do have with them and making those connections in a way that is meaningful to them so that they feel connected and valued. And that's what builds healthy people, whether you work inside the home or outside the home.
Yeah.
It's that you make the value for families so that you make the choices when you are around to make those connections so that they are feeling loved and valued and important. My parents both worked full-time pretty much our whole lives, and I have amazing connection with both my mom and dad, and incredible family. And we did it all while going to public school with my parents working, because they took the intentional time and cast vision for value for family, and then we built around that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to
where do we want to pick up here?
Right here, translating your values into your kids. Okay. So just great question from Zach there. And I hope that was really helpful for a lot of us listening. But so we have our own values, and we're going to teach you how to know what your values really are here with your little homework assignment next. But, because this is parenting and helping to translate our values into our kids' lives,
right.
Then the question is, how do we translate those values into our kids? Well, the biggest thing is we talk about the why for the decisions that we're making.
Yeah.
Like, we don't just do things. We talk about, hey, I want you to actually see that mom or dad has this opportunity to go do this thing. But you know what? Tonight, we're not going to do that. And here's why. Because we have a value for family. We've been feeling a little disconnected, and we just want to stay home and play with you guys today.
Yeah. So, like, as an example, our kids were still really little when I did my first mission trip overseas for the first time since before we were married. And it was to Togo, Africa. Like, I was going to be traveling 2 days there, 2 days back, I was gone for 2 weeks, and our kids were still really pretty young. I think Ezra was maybe 2, something around there. And so this was like an eternity that I was going to be gone. And I didn't know whether I'd be able to call. I had no idea what kind of internet I would have there, how connected I was going to be able to stay. And so there were different things that I talked about. Like, we were going to be doing evangelism crusades and going into school and preaching the gospel. And we knew we would be seeing hundreds or even thousands of people getting saved. And so we talked about that. Why is this valuable and worth daddy going? And how can they even contribute to it? I knew we'd be going to an orphanage. So I asked them to ask Jesus to give them pictures that then they colored, and I gave them prophetic pictures from my kids. I gave those pictures to certain ones of the orphans in the orphanage. And so and then taking pictures, making sure I took pictures of those exchanges so that I could come home and share with them, this is the impact that your gift had, that your contribution, so that they could feel like they'd been a part of it instead of just this was daddy's thing. So we explained the value for why the sacrifice was worth it. And then we included them in it so that they could make a contribution towards it, not just out of lack, but out of gift as well.
Yeah. One of the things that we have is Friday night family pizza and movie night. And it's funny because our kids know that this is a connection point and part of our value system. And so, sometimes if we're like, I need to miss a Friday night, now we do miss a Friday night here or there, like one or the other of us. But for the most part, even our kids will like call us on this. It's called family pizza and movie night, and so they're calling us back like, hey, if you've missed too many family pizza and movie nights, like, you're outside the bounds of family. We have a high value for cleanliness in our home, and it's funny because there are really big opinions on whether kids should do chores or not. But
not just our kids having their own opinions, but there are actually voices and influencers out there who will tell you that you're abusing your children if you make them do chores.
Slave labor, if you make
slave
them do
labor.
chores.
Totally loaded terms they throw out there.
This is also a family connection point for us, or the value for family. It instills the value of stewardship, and we talk about that with them, and it makes them powerful people. Like, they're not just having to wait on somebody. They actually can contribute in a powerful way, which is also family building. Like, hey, you're actually contributing to the family when you do this. So we use these values to filter the decisions that we make about a lot of things, and family ends up being a very powerful boundary that then enables a powerful yes or a powerful no to get us to where we want to go with healthy family.
So just to kind of close this off before the homework with a recent example, was just our kids, especially our older ones, they've really been asking lately, I want to be involved in drama. I want to be involved in the local plays. I want to be involved in choir or band or whatever. And we're like, okay, well, you have friends who are involved in drama, and you see how many things they have to say no to that you currently are involved in because they're engaged in intense practice schedules. Is that what you want? How does that fit our values? Because you realize you're not just saying yes to drama, you're ending up saying no to other things you would maybe like to spend time doing. And you're not just saying no to drama, you're saying yes to more time with family, or more time for youth group, or more time for those things. And so it's helping them walk through those decisions according to values.
And this can actually be a really good help, like when they come to the dating age, when they learn, and this is something we say all the time too, we're not going to make emotional decisions. We're going to make decisions based on our values. So, when they're feeling this strong pull of attraction to somebody, we come back to, okay, let's go to your values. Do they line up with your values? Or,
do they love Jesus?
Do they love Jesus?
Are they showing some responsibility in life? I was just talking to a mom last night about a daughter dating relationship, and she's like, I really like the guy. Like, he checks the boxes, and I was just like, he feels like an actual man, not just like a kid in process still. And she's like, yeah, and I don't know. Things like that.
Yeah, it's really good. So if we start with the little things when they're young, talking about our values and why, and helping our kids to see that we're living life from our value system, and that inviting them into the process of making decisions through their value system. And that actually helps them when they get to adulthood also, just helping them. How do I live from values instead of from emotions or wants or culture or drive or whatever, but making decisions from the things that matter to them. And then it becomes the boundaries that keep their life on the right track.
Yeah.
Okay, here is your homework assignment. And this can help you to decide like what your values are really and what you want them to be, and then intentionally build towards them. So first of all, just write down, what values do you feel like you already have? You're like, this is a value, this is a value, this is a value. We talked about that, helping the poor or comfort, or like just knowing Jesus is a value for me. Okay. First of all, make the list of what you feel like you already have for your values. And then go ahead and just make a log of where you actually spend your time and your money. You can do this as you go over the next month, or you can look at in the last week or month and kind of divide out your time. How much time did you spend on this, that, or the other thing? And then
I have a high value for Wordle.
Right?
I have a high value for scrolling Facebook.
I realized on our camping trip, like, I love adventure, but I have a higher value for safety than I do for adventure. My daughter, on the other hand, has like a much higher value for adventure than safety. So we get into a little conflict there sometimes.
Not necessarily, but by her definition of safety, it's like 3 feet away from the guardrail that is very concretely anchored into the whatever. Safety might look a little more.
Just safety looks different to us, I guess. Okay. So one, write down the values that you feel like you already have. Two, make a log to see where you spend your time and money. And then ask, does this actually line up with what you feel like your values are? Or does that actually show you that you have different values than you thought that you actually had? Pam's laughing at that one.
Right.
Hi, Auntie Pam. Okay. And then next, what things do you need to adjust to make sure that your values are being lived from? So if you notice that you really have a value for teaching your kids God's word, but you realize that you actually haven't spent any time at all teaching them the word, then you need to make some adjustments in the things that you actually do to place that value into your life and into your kids. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that well?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have a value for teaching our kids God's word, for not making that a Sunday school teacher's job, or making that we want to make sure it happens, and we want to make sure we guide that process. So what structures are we going to put into our lives as a family to make sure it happens? We've put in evening devotion time, and then as homeschool has come in, and there is a Bible class as our homeschool, we've taken advantage of that. Instead of doing a curriculum, we just read the Bible as a family.
Yeah, or if you do notice that you're spending significant amounts of times on Wordle or Facebook or things like that,
whatever else,
then ask yourself, what is this satisfying in me? Because that will be the true value that you have. It's not just that you, like, maybe it's you value information or a connection with these people, or maybe you value like just checkout time and downtime. So that will help define what value you really have. And then if you're not expressing that value in the way that you hoped that you would, you could ask, if you're like, no, I realize I spend too much time over here. Okay, then how can I build that through the filter of family? Like, if I want to do this, like, how do I restructure some of these things so that it actually comes out in a healthy way through the value that you really actually want it to have? I mean, if it really is like you're just using it for checkout or relaxation,
or you're just feeling like you're overwhelmed, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, I feel overwhelmed. Now maybe you can choose a healthier, one that actually leads to results instead of just numbing. Maybe you can find something that actually helps. I'm not saying it
like
very
you
well,
could,
but
you could restructure it so that your checkout or your refresh, it comes through playing a game and laughing with your kids, or digging in the garden together, or something like that. Just find another healthy alternative that helps you build that. So asking those questions, like what do you feel like your values already are, or what would you say were your high priority values, and then what are you actually doing? And then if they line up with those values, great, pat yourself on the back, you're doing a great job.
Yay.
If they're not, then here's how you can say, okay, what is that satisfying, and how do I build intentionally? Or if you see that you feel like you have a value, but none of your time or energy or money is going there, then what things do you need to implement in your life to actually begin to build towards that value? And with that, I think we're going to wrap up because we're a bit over our time today. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us in this. We love you all, and we just bless you. We bless your family and your week. And as you discover your values and recreate structures, we just bless the process in that.
Yes.
All right. Have a great week. Join us here next Friday. We'll see you again.